Hello everyone, my name is Carey, and I chose to do my final project on a court case involving abortion and the First Amendment. So the first things first, when it comes to abortion, it's one of the most difficult and challenging topics to address. There's a big controversy of where to draw the line with science and life. So the court case that I chose to do is NIFLA versus Becerra. So who is NIFLA? NIFLA stands for the National Institute of Family and Life Advocates. Um, they're a national organization who are pro-life, and they represent pregnancy centers across the United States that do not provide abortions or referrals for abortions. And where this court case is happening in California, there are 73 of these kind of centers, and they're challenging the FACT Act, is what they're trying to go against. So the FACT Act stands for the Freedom, Accountability, Comprehensive Care, and Transparency Act. It was signed into law on October 9, 2015, and effective starting January 1st, 2016. It forces pro-life pregnancy centers to provide free advertising for abortion industries. It requires licensed medical centers that offer free pro-life help to pregnant women to post a disclosure saying that California provides a free and or low-cost abortion and contraception service. It also makes you include phone number for the county office that refers women to Planned Parenthood and other abortionists. It also forces unlicensed pregnancy centers to add large disclosures about their non-medical status in all advertisements, even if they provide no medical service. So even like the crisis centers that kind of offer guidance on what to do, they have to tell them that there are other options out there. So in this case, the PCC stands for the Pregnancy Care Clinic. That's the main one in this court case. It's a crisis pregnancy center, so one of the 73 in California. They provide services to women in unplanned pregnancies for pro-life viewpoint. So NIFLA and PCC, they're arguing that the licensing notice amounted to viewpoint discrimination for their pro-life statements. They say that it violated the First Amendment and should be subject to strict scrutiny. And then you have Xavier Becerra on the other side, who is an attorney general in California. So the test for scrutiny to be able to see what it could be. So looking at strict scrutiny, we learned that there's two main things. Is it narrowly tailored, and does it have substantial government interest? Another court case that was similar to this involving NIFLA was NIFLA v. Harris. In this court case in California, the Ninth Circuit examined which standard of scrutiny to apply in cases regarding mandated abortion clinics disclosures that allegedly violated the free speech rights of anti-abortion facilities. So this is kind of like the you know the beginning of this whole court case with Becerra. Licensed clinics noticed that the FACT Act are considered professional speech. They require intermediate scrutiny and survive the intermediate scrutiny review. And this was based off of a unanimous decision. Another court case that was very similar to this was the Pickup v. Brown. This was in 2012, also in California. It challenged California's State Senate Bill SB 1172, which banned conversion therapy on children under the age of 18, effective in 2013. So what happened? What conversion therapy is? It's a therapy aimed at changing sexual orientation. The plaintiff in the case was David Pickup. He was a conversion therapist and spokesman for the National Association for Research and Therapy of Homosexuality. Defendants included the governor of California, Jerry Brown. It also had the Secretary of State and Consumer Services Agency. A lot of these kind of psychological and science higher-ups in the state of California. So in December 2012, the district court judge hearing Pickup declined an issue for an injunction blocking SB 1172. The judge hearing Welch, which was also similar to this very case, did issue an injunction. Both cases appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court and consolidated, but in the end, they upheld SB 1172 and reversed the lower court order granting a preliminary injunction. So what does this mean? Pretty much the district court found that the license notice that required by the FACT Act constituted professional speech and that it was subject to intermediate scrutiny. the court decided that the license notice survived intermediate scrutiny because the state's interest was substantial and the law was viewpoint neutral. So this also, it did not preclude dissemination of altered information additional to the license notice. So how does this impact NIFLA versus Becerra? Basically, the court denied NIFLA and the PCC's motion for an injunction. They both appealed for it, and alleging that it was abuse of discretion. In the Ninth Circuit, they affirmed that the district's court decision, and they said that although the license notice constituted content-based speech, it did not rise to the level of viewpoint discrimination. Therefore, it did not demand strict scrutiny. And all of this was relying on interpretation of what happened before with NIFLA with Pickup versus Brown. So the Supreme Court doesn't have scrutiny standards for abortion disclosure requirements yet because of these past cases, and it constituted professional speech to intermediate scrutiny, which it survived. So things to consider about who should win NIFLA versus Becerra. Going back to what we learned in Unit 1, you have to look at content-based and content-neutral. So going back to content-based, the three things that go with it is it's justified by a compelling government interest, it's narrowly drawn minimum abridgment of free expression and strict scrutiny, and then for content-neutral, you have important or substantial government interest unrelated to suppression of speech, narrowly tailored, and intermediate scrutiny. So who should win? In my opinion, I think that Becerra should win this case. Why? Because this is not strict scrutiny. It is narrowly tailored, it's substantial government interest, and it's intermediate scrutiny. So going back to what we said before about content neutral, I think this falls best under this. So going back to our law review, I got my law review from the Suffolk University Law Review from 2017. The FACT Act, in the law review, it said that the FACT Act passes strict scrutiny because it's narrowly tailored and it compels interest. And then a quote from the law review: a substantial interest in the health of its citizens, including in ensuring that its citizens have access to and adequate information about constitutionally protected medical services like abortion, and, quote, narrowly drawn to achieve California's substantial interest. So what they're saying here is that in California, they have a substantial interest to provide citizens with other options, not necessarily telling them what to do, but just telling them that there are other options out there, and these options are available for you. In the law review still, they say that speech regulations in abortion clinics and pregnancy centers have fallen into two different categories, largely along ideological lines. So going back to what all these abortion cases are, it's hard for a lot of court cases to figure out where that line is. We know that there is no standard level yet because it's still hard to choose that line between science and life. So the law review states that regulations requiring physicians to disclose certain details pertaining to the possible side effects of abortion and specific developmental details of the fetus, including the sonogram, reflects the anti-abortion camp. And then the other side is that mandates requiring anti-abortion pregnancy centers to disclose the extent of their services and the availability of outside abortion resources have been reviewed in pro-choice policies. So basically that these two regulation schemes have been received different treatment by the courts, going back to what we saw in Pickup versus Brown and NIFLA versus Harris, two different sides from different sides of injunctions and different kind of rulings about where the court decided to take both these cases. So going back to my opinion about why I think Becerra should win, compared to other court cases with Pickup versus Brown, where there was no scrutiny standards for abortion yet, and the law is also viewpoint neutral. And then we also have a different kind of similar court cases. We have McCollum versus Coakley, which we talked about earlier this year, where it's not about what you say, but where you say it. And going back, this was the court case that the 35 feet buffer zone outside of abortion clinics, where that was like the safe zone for them. You also have the Planned Parenthood versus Casey. In this one, it was Reproductive Health Care Facility Act violated the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution because it limits free speech. And then in this court case, it was upheld the constitutionally of the Pennsylvania law that requires doctors performing abortion to provide their clinics with healthcare information related to them. So kind of going back where licensed or not, you have to be able to provide this kind of other health information to them. This is obviously after the fact already happens, but just kind of being able to have that first step and going forward from here, from Pennsylvania, and just learning that the law isn't telling people what to do, it's just informing them of what's going on. So, other reasons of why I think Becerra should win. The law, like I said, it was viewed as viewpoint neutral. I think it's because it's looking out for everyone and letting them know that there are other options out there. Like I said, they aren't directly saying to go to these places. They are making sure that people are aware of those opinions, and because of what California is trying to do and what they're doing from the law review, that they are ensuring, they want the best health for their citizens. So they want the best treatments available, and what they want their citizens to have a freedom to pick what they want to do. Um, Also, because the issue should be ruled as content-based, the court does not have to examine with strict scrutiny. Learning from our content neutral regulations PowerPoint back in Unit 1, it makes it easier for the law to win, and the court uses immediate scrutiny. It's also listed under the standard review, which, like I was saying, because of this, because it is not content-based regulation, the court does not have to examine with strict scrutiny. So that's the end of my PowerPoint. To conclude, basically, Becerra should win because this law isn't hurting they aren't hurting the people. They are informing people and looking out for the best interest of those citizens, that other options are out there without having to force people to go do those things. Thank you, guys.